"Your son is an idiot." That's what my former daughter-in-law Jessica whispered to me as she walked out of the San Francisco Superior Court. She was smiling. Her mother, Mrs. Sterling, was beaming behind her like a Cheshire cat. They had just watched my son, Michael, sign a divorce settlement that looked like financial suicide. He gave Jessica the house in Pacific Heights, he gave her the lake house in Tahoe, he gave her the Tesla, and in exchange, he took on $10 million in marital debt. The judge asked him 3 times if he was sure. His own lawyer looked like he wanted to vomit, but Michael stood tall, looked Jessica in the eye, and signed the papers. Jessica thought she had won the lottery. She thought she had stripped the Rhodes family of its legacy. She planned to celebrate that night at the Fairmont Hotel with her secret lover, a man who had spent 25 years plotting the destruction of my family. But Jessica made one fatal miscalculation. She thought Michael was acting alone. She didn't know that the night before the hearing, sat at my kitchen table, I had given him a very specific set of instructions. "Give her everything she wants," I told him. "Let her think she won, because the moment she signs that paper, she walks into the trap." She didn't know about the clause in my late husband's trust. She didn't know about the private investigator I had hired 6 months ago, and she certainly didn't know that while she was drinking champagne, I was preparing a speech that would send her to federal prison. This is the story of how a mother protected her cub by letting the wolves think they had devoured him. Before I tell you exactly how we turned a $10 million debt into a $50 million victory, I need to know who is listening. Pause the video right now. Go to the comments and tell me, where are you watching this from? And tell me, if you found out someone was stealing from your child, how far would you go to stop them? I'm reading every single one. Now, let's go to court. It started 6 months before the court date. I went to visit Michael at his architecture firm downtown. My husband, Henry, had founded the firm 40 years ago, and Michael had taken it over when Henry passed. It was a good business, solid. But when I walked into Michael's office that Tuesday, he looked like a ghost. He was staring at a spreadsheet. His tie was loose. He had dark circles under his eyes that no amount of coffee could fix. "Michael?" I asked. He jumped. He tried to hide the papers. "Mom," he forced a smile, "I didn't know you were coming." "I brought you lunch," I said, setting down a bag from his favorite deli. "You look terrible, darling. Is it Jessica?" "Jessica's fine," he said quickly, too quickly. "Just market volatility. Construction costs are up." I didn't believe him. I know my son. He's a builder. He solves problems. He doesn't panic over the price of lumber. When he went to the restroom, I did something I hadn't done since he was a teenager. I looked at the papers on his desk. They weren't construction invoices. They were loan delinquency notices. Chase Bank, overdue amount, $45,000. Wells Fargo, line of credit maxed out. I felt a cold chill. Michael was conservative with money. He didn't take risky loans. Then I saw the transfer logs. $200,000 wired to J&J Holdings. $500,000 wired to J&J Holdings. J&J Holdings. I had never heard of it. Michael came back. I didn't confront him then. I kissed his cheek, told him to eat his sandwich, and left. But I didn't go home. I went to see an old friend, Nina Cross. She was a former FBI agent who now ran the most discreet private investigation firm in the Bay Area. "Eleanor," Nina said, pouring me a scotch, "you have that look. Who am I hunting?" "My daughter-in-law," I said, "and a company called J&J Holdings." 2 weeks later, Nina came to my estate in Sausalito. She carried a thick black binder. "You were right to worry," Nina said, sitting down on my patio. "Michael isn't bad with money, Eleanor. He's being robbed." She opened the binder. "Jessica has forged his signature on 3 separate business loans totaling $10 million. She funneled the money into J&J Holdings." "And what is J&J Holdings?" I asked, my hands shaking. "It's a shell company," Nina said. "Registered in Nevada. No employees, no office, just a bank account." "Who owns it?" "A man named Julian Ford." The name hit me like a physical blow. "Ford," I whispered. "Is he related to Richard Ford?" "His son, Julian Richard Ford. He dropped his middle name legally 10 years ago." I stood up and walked to the edge of the patio, looking out at the bay. 30 years ago, my husband, Henry, had a business partner named Richard Ford. Richard was a gambler. He tried to embezzle from the firm. Henry caught him. We bought him out legally, fair and square. But Richard couldn't handle the failure. He went bankrupt. A year later, he took his own life. He left behind a teenage son, Julian. "He's back," I whispered. "It's revenge." "It gets worse," Nina said gently. She slid a stack of photos across the table. They were photos of Jessica, but she wasn't with Michael. She was with a handsome man in his 40s, Julian. They were at the Four Seasons. They were on a yacht. They were looking at real estate in Italy. "She's having an affair with him," Nina said. "But it's not just an affair, Eleanor. He's handling her. He targeted her, he seduced her, and he convinced her to steal $10 million from your son to fund their getaway." I looked at the photos. Jessica looked happy. She looked victorious. She was wearing a diamond necklace that I recognized. It was bought with my son's sweat and stress. "Does Michael know?" I asked. "I don't think so," Nina said. "He just knows the money is gone. He's trying to cover the debts to save the marriage." "He's trying to save a corpse," I said. I closed the binder. "Thank you, Nina. Keep watching them. I need everything. Bank accounts, text messages, travel logs." "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I am going to tell my son the truth, and then we are going to set a trap." That night, I invited Michael to dinner. I made his favorite, beef Wellington. He barely touched it. He looked like he was about to collapse. "Michael," I said, pouring him a glass of wine, "we need to talk about Richard Ford." Michael looked up, confused. "Dad's old partner? The one who died? Why?" I slid Nina's black binder across the table. "Open it." I watched my son's life fall apart in real time. He saw the loans, he saw the forgery, he saw the shell company, and then he saw the photos. His wife, the woman he had loved for 10 years, kissing another man, laughing with another man, spending his money on another man. Michael didn't cry. He went very, very quiet. "Julian Ford," Michael whispered. "The son." "He blames our family for his father's death," I said. "He spent 25 years planning this. He found Jessica. He used her greed against us. He isn't just stealing from you, Michael. He is trying to destroy the Rhodes legacy." Michael put his head in his hands. "I'm ruined, Mom. 10 million in debt. If I divorce her, she'll take half the assets and I'll still be stuck with the loans because they're in my name. The firm will go under." "No," I said firmly, "it won't." I stood up and went to the safe in the library. I pulled out a document bound in red velvet. "Your father knew," I said. "Before he died, Henry suspected that Richard's family might come back. He was paranoid, we thought, but he was right." I opened the document. "This is the Rhodes Generation Skipping Trust." Michael looked at it. "I thought Dad left everything to me directly." "He left the operating accounts to you," I explained, "but the bulk of the estate, the real wealth, the land, the patent royalties, the offshore holdings, it's in this trust." I pointed to a clause on page 50, the clean break clause. "The beneficiary, Michael Rhodes, shall only receive access to the trust assets valued at approximately $50 million under the condition that he is unmarried or that his spouse has signed a full waiver of interest in his assets." "Do you understand what this means?" I asked. Michael looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "It means, as long as I'm married to Jessica, I am technically worth nothing." "Exactly. But the moment you are divorced, the moment she signs a settlement waiving her rights to your future income in exchange for the current assets, you inherit $50 million. "So," Michael started to smile, a cold, dangerous smile. "So," I finished, "we are going to give her exactly what she wants." We spent the next 3 months planning the divorce. Michael filed. He played the part of the defeated, desperate husband. He let Jessica's shark of a lawyer bully him. He offered the settlement. Jessica gets the condo, $3 million, the lake house, $2 million, the cars, the jewelry. Michael gets the debt, $10 million, and the business, which Jessica thought was worthless because of the debt. Jessica and Julian were ecstatic. We knew because Nina had tapped their phones. "He's giving up," Jessica laughed to Julian on a recorded call. "He's taking the debt to save his reputation. We get the assets free and clear." "Take it," Julian told her. "Sign the papers, then we leave for Italy." And that brings us back to the courtroom. The judge looked at Michael. "Mr. Rhodes, you are assuming $10 million in liabilities. You are leaving yourself with 0 liquid assets. Do you understand?" "I do, Your Honor." "And Mrs. Rhodes," the judge turned to Jessica, "you are accepting the properties and waiving all future claims to Mr. Rhodes' estate or business revenue." "Yes, Your Honor," Jessica said, trying not to smirk. "I just want to move on." "Very well." The gavel banged. It was done. Jessica walked out victorious. She thought she had stripped the carcass clean. She didn't know that the carcass was a decoy. As she walked away, I pulled Michael into a hug. "It's done," I whispered. "The trust unlocks in 30 days. "What do we do now?" Michael asked. "Now," I said, checking my watch, "we wait for the gala." "The gala?" "The architecture and design gala next week. Jessica is on the board. She'll be there. Julian will be there. They'll want to flaunt their victory." And, I smiled, "I accepted the Lifetime Achievement Award on behalf of your father. I'm giving a speech." "Mom," Michael warned, "what are you going to do?" "I'm going to introduce San Francisco to Julian Ford, and I'm going to show them exactly who paid for his Rolex." The 30 days following the divorce hearing were the longest of my life. According to the trust, Michael had to be legally divorced for 30 days before the assets unlocked. During that time, he had to live like a pauper. He moved into a small studio apartment in the Mission District. He drove an old Honda. He ate ramen. Meanwhile, Jessica was living it up. Nina, my investigator, sent me updates daily. Day 5. Jessica and Julian spotted at the Tesla dealership. She bought him a Model S Plaid. Day 12. Jessica listed the lake house for sale. Day 20. They threw a freedom party at the condo. Mrs. Sterling was there, drinking vintage champagne, toasting to her daughter's shrewd business mind. It took every ounce of self-control I had not to intervene. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive over there and shake them. But I remembered what Henry used to say: "Never interrupt your enemy when they are making a mistake." And they were making mistakes, big ones. Because they felt safe, they got sloppy. Julian started moving money from the shell company into his personal accounts. He used his real name. He paid off old gambling debts in Vegas. He essentially left a neon trail of breadcrumbs right back to the fraud. 2 days before the gala, I met with Nina and a forensic accountant named Troy in my library. "We have them," Troy said, laying out a spreadsheet that looked like a battle map. "We can prove the $10 million loan proceeds went directly to J&J Holdings and from there to Julian Ford. It's wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy." "And Jessica?" I asked. "She signed the transfer orders," Nina said. "She's complicit. She might claim ignorance, say Julian tricked her, but her signature is on the checks that bought the jewelry she's wearing." "Good," I said. I looked at the date. October 15th. The gala was tomorrow night. I picked up the phone and called the event coordinator. "This is Eleanor Rhodes," I said. "I'd like to make a small change to my presentation for the Lifetime Achievement Award. I have some family photos I'd like to include in the slideshow to honor Henry's legacy." "Of course, Mrs. Rhodes," the coordinator gushed. "Send them over." I spent the rest of the night curating the photos. Slide 1. Henry founding the firm. Slide 2. Michael graduating architecture school. Slide 3. A bank statement showing a $500,000 unauthorized wire transfer to Julian Ford. Slide 4. A photo of Jessica kissing Julian on a yacht bought with stolen money. Slide 5. The police report from 1998 detailing Richard Ford's embezzlement. I loaded the file onto a USB drive. It felt heavier in my hand, heavier than gold. The next evening, I put on my best gown, black velvet, high collar. I wore the diamond necklace Henry gave me for our 30th anniversary. I drove to Michael's studio. He was waiting in his tuxedo, looking nervous. "Mom, are you sure about this? It's going to be a scene." I straightened his bow tie. "Michael, they tried to bury you. They tried to steal your father's name and your future. A scene is exactly what they deserve. Tonight, we aren't just architects, we are demolition experts." We got into my car. We drove to the Palace of Fine Arts. The gala was in full swing. As we walked up the red carpet, I saw them. Jessica was wearing a gold dress that screamed new money. Julian was in a tuxedo that didn't quite fit, looking around nervously like he was expecting someone to recognize him. Mrs. Sterling was holding court with the board members. When Jessica saw Michael, she laughed. She actually whispered something to Julian and pointed. She thought Michael was there to beg. She thought he was broken. She didn't know that the man standing next to me was about to be worth $55 million, and she didn't know that the woman standing next to him was holding the detonator. The ballroom was magnificent. 500 of San Francisco's elite, architects, developers, city officials. We sat at table 1, the legacy table. Jessica and Julian were at table 4, close enough to see, far enough to ignore. Every time I looked over, Jessica raised her glass in a mocking toast. At 9 p.m., the lights dimmed. The chairman took the stage. And finally, he announced, the Lifetime Achievement Award, honoring the late Henry Rhodes, accepting on his behalf his wife, Eleanor Rhodes. Applause. Polite, respectful applause. I walked up the stairs. I took the Crystal Award. I stood at the podium and looked out at the sea of faces. I saw Jessica smirking. I saw Julian checking his watch. "Thank you," I began. My voice was amplified, booming through the hall. Henry believed that architecture was about truth. A building cannot stand if its foundation is built on lies. I paused. The room went quiet. Tonight, I want to talk about foundations, and I want to talk about the threats that try to tear them down. I clicked the remote. The screen behind me lit up. A photo of Henry, smiles from the audience. "Henry built this firm on integrity," I said, "but not everyone shares those values." Click. The screen changed. It wasn't a family photo. It was a Chase Bank wire transfer record. Sender, Michael Rhodes' business account. Authorized by Jessica Rhodes. Recipient, J&J Holdings. Amount, $2 million. A ripple of confusion went through the room. "Over the last 3 years," I said, my voice turning to steel, "my former daughter-in-law, Jessica Rhodes, forged signatures to steal $10 million from this firm." Gasps. Someone dropped a glass. Jessica stood up. "What is this? Turn it off." "Sit down, Jessica," I said into the mic. "I have the floor." Click. A photo appeared, huge, high resolution. Jessica and Julian on the deck of a yacht in Cabo. Julian is shirtless, Jessica is wearing a bikini and holding a bottle of Dom Perpane. "She stole that money to fund a life with this man," I pointed at the screen. "You may know him as Julian the investor, but his real name is Julian Richard Ford." Click. A newspaper clipping from 1998. Richard Ford bankrupt after embezzlement attempt. "He is the son of the man who tried to rob my husband 30 years ago," I announced. "He spent decades planning revenge. He seduced my daughter-in-law. He convinced her to destroy her own husband. He is a con artist." Julian jumped up. He looked like a trapped rat. He shoved his chair back and ran toward the exit. "Security," I said calmly. 2 large men blocked the doors. "You can't leave, Julian," I said into the mic, "because the San Francisco Police Department is waiting in the lobby." Jessica was screaming now. "It's a lie! She's crazy! Michael, tell them!" I looked at Michael. He stood up, he buttoned his jacket, he looked every inch the CEO he was born to be. "It's not a lie, Jessica," Michael said, his voice carrying without a microphone. "We have the forensic audit. We have your text messages. We have everything." "But the settlement, you took the debt. It's your debt." "Actually," I interrupted, "the debt was fraudulent, and since we proved fraud, the settlement is void." I clicked the remote one last time. A document appeared. The Rhodes Trust. Value, $55 million. Beneficiary, Michael Rhodes. "And since you are no longer his wife," I said, looking Jessica dead in the eye, "you don't get a penny of the real fortune." The room erupted. Flashbulbs went off. People were standing on chairs to get a look. Jessica looked at the screen, then at Michael, then at Julian, who was being handcuffed by the police who had just entered the ballroom. She realized in that split second that she had traded a diamond mine for a handful of dirt. She collapsed. collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Mrs. Sterling tried to comfort her, but even she looked terrified, realizing her gravy train had just derailed. I looked at the audience. My husband built strong foundations, and I protect them. I walked off the stage.
The fallout was swift and absolute. Julian was denied bail. With his history and the flight risk, the judge wasn't taking chances. He pled guilty to wire fraud and money laundering to avoid a 20-year sentence. He got 10 years. Jessica? Jessica tried to fight. She claimed she was a victim of Julian's manipulation, but the text messages Nina found proved otherwise. "The old lady is clueless," Jessica had written to Julian. "Once Michael signs the debt, we are free." That text message got her 5 years in federal prison for conspiracy and fraud. The assets she won in the divorce, the house, the condo, the Tesla, were seized to pay back the bank loans she had fraudulently taken out. She lost everything. Mrs. Sterling moved to Arizona. She couldn't show her face in San Francisco anymore. As for Michael, the trust unlocked the day the annulment was finalized. We got an annulment based on fraud, erasing the marriage entirely. He paid off the legitimate business debts. He restored the firm's reputation. And he met someone. Her name is Sarah. She's not a model. She's a structural engineer. She's smart, she's kind, and she insists on paying for her own dinner. One Sunday, a year later, we were all having brunch on the patio in Sausalito. Michael looked at me. He looked happy, younger. "Mom," he said, "you saved my life. You know that, right?" "I just helped you read the blueprints, Michael," I smiled. I looked out at the bay. The water was calm. I thought about Henry. I thought about the legacy we built. It turns out the strongest thing we ever built wasn't a skyscraper. It was this family. People ask me if I feel bad for Jessica, if I think the punishment was too harsh. I tell them this: if you invite a snake into your garden, don't be surprised when you get bitten. But if you try to bite the gardener, you better make sure you have more venom than she does, because this gardener, she owns the land. Thank you for watching this story of justice and redemption. If you enjoyed seeing a greedy villain get exactly what they deserved, please like this video and subscribe to Granny Archive Stories. I want to hear from you. What is the best piece of advice your mother ever gave you? Let me know in the comments. And remember, always read the fine print.